Associate Director of Graduate. Oh, okay. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian Lehman, and I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions at the Keough School of Global Affairs at the University of Notre Dame. And we're located in Indiana, which is one of the northern states in the United States. I want to thank you for joining me today. You're giving up one of your most precious resources, and that is your time. And so I appreciate that you would spend some of your time with me today. The topic that I wanted to share with you today aligns with the work that I do because I recruit for a master's program and a PhD program. And we just got done with the application cycle for this year, and we're just starting the application cycle for this coming year for people that want to start in fall of 2027. So the topic that I want to talk about today is very relevant. It's geared for people who are looking to apply either for a master's or a PhD program in the United States. And for me, there always seem to be several what I call critical components to make your application very competitive. And, while my advice might be geared, say for my program, it really is advice that you can use as you look at any program that you're applying for, engineering programs or business programs. Again, geared toward the US style of application documents. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about three critical components to make your application competitive. We're going to talk about resumes and CVs. So these are documents that talk about your skills and experiences. Another one that we're going to talk about is a statement of intent. This is where you start talking about why it is that you want to apply for a particular program and what it is that you're hoping to get out of it. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is how to get letters of recommendation and why they're critical. So while I'll talk about those three things, I'm also going to share with you some documents that you can use so that you can follow along with the application process. So that way, as you're writing your resume or your CV or your statement of intent, you have these documents that you can use. Additionally, I'm going to also share some other tips that selection committees are looking for and things that you can also use to enhance to make your application competitive as well. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about my programs in case you're interested. And I want to leave some time for any questions and answers that you may have. So before I begin to share my screen and use the presentation, I'm going to share some documents with you in the chat. So then that way you have them as I go along. Okay. So the first document I want to share with you is a resume template. It is in Word format, so you can change it however you want based on your skills and experiences. The next document that I'm sharing with you is a CV or curriculum vitae. And I'll talk a little bit later about how the resume and CV, sometimes we use the terms together. They're actually a little bit different. And then the third document that I want to share with you is an example of what a statement of intent looks like. Sometimes it's a statement of research. So anyway, those are those three documents that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and go into the presentation, and then we'll get started. Okay, and I'll assume that everyone can see my presentation here. So, okay. All right, so as I mentioned, building a strong U.S. graduate style application. Okay, so let's first go into a resume. So the whole purpose of a resume, and a resume is kind of a first impression that someone has of you. But this is your opportunity to present yourself quickly. So, for example, you don't know me right now. You are just getting to know who I am and what I do. And when I hand you a resume, you should be able to look at this document, which in this case is a two-page document, and be able to say, oh, okay, I see this is what Christian did. This is where he went to school. These are his skills and experiences. I am presenting myself very quickly. Application committees, they might be reviewing hundreds of resumes. And so, in a very quick manner, they need to be able to see and get to know a person a little bit. So, just like with the document that I shared with you, this is what a US style resume looks like that you can use for application purposes. And this is the document that we're going to be going through. Since you're applying for graduate schools, your resume should be 2 pages, and that second page should be at least halfway full. And so before you begin writing a resume, you should just take a look at some of the major topics here, like education, professional experience, leadership and service, technical skills and awards, and start asking the question, what are all the things that I've done? And then go ahead and just start listing those things on a separate sheet of paper, so that way you can come back to it as you're going to start writing your resume. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go through step by step the different sections of the resume and show you how you can build your resume. So the top part of the resume, we start with some of the most important contact information. So obviously you see that your name is there, and then you can list where it is that you live, yeah, the city or the country in your context. You should also have a means of contacting you, so maybe your email address. Um, those X's there, if you want to, you can put a contact phone number. Maybe it's a WhatsApp phone number that you might want to put there. And then and I highly recommend, if you haven't already done so, to include your LinkedIn profile on there as well. When I'm sifting through applications, one of the first places I also go to look to see if I can find more information about an applicant is on their LinkedIn profile. So obviously we want that sort of information at the top. If you want to include a hyperlink to your email or LinkedIn for easy access, you're welcome to. And then, of course, with your LinkedIn contact information, consider customizing it so that you can make it shorter. So that way it just lists your first and last name in there. Okay, so contact information. So the way that US style resumes are formatted is that the first section up at the top should be about your education. And like with all components of your resume, you want to list things in reverse chronological order. And what I mean by that is the things at the top are the most recent things that you've done, and then the least recent ones are toward the bottom. So in this particular example, this applicant is saying that they are pursuing their PhD in electrical engineering because that's what they're doing right now. And if you notice the format on the left side, you bold the name of the university. On the right side, you say where that university is, or maybe for you, it's where your college is or university. The next line, you want to put the title of your degree. So maybe you're getting a bachelor's in business or in teaching. Um, and then on the right-hand side of that, you want to put the expected year that you're going to graduate. And then, of course, if you have another place that you've gone to school, you will also put that there as well. So, education section is the first section. The next section is what I call the major part of the resume. And this section is probably going to take up most of your resume. And this is where you get to talk about your experiences, what you have done. Now, in this particular example, I've put professional experience. What I see in our master's program or in PhD programs is we have applicants that have already been working in industry, they've already been working a job or something like that. And so they might want to list it as professional experience for this section. Now, maybe for you, it might be a little bit different. Maybe it's been research experience because you've been in school up to this point, and so you want to talk about that. But here's an opportunity where you can list all of the things that you have done. And remember, you're going to list them in reverse chronological order. So the thing that you're doing right now to the thing that you did in the past. And that's how you go down the line. You'll notice in this format, to make it easier for, say, like a selection committee to read, is we use bullet points. So that way it focuses the eyes on a very particular section. And then you're going to provide a brief description of what you've done. You'll notice on the right-hand side, you put where you did your experience and the dates for it. And for each experience, I would recommend that you put 3 to 5 bullet points for each of those. And so now the question that you're probably asking is, well, how do I write a description? And so we're going to get into that topic right now. So how you build writing your bullet point descriptions is 3 parts. You're going to start with an action verb, and an action verb are things like coordinated, implemented, directed, accounted, initiated. So it's describing an action that you've done, but it's doing that or using a verb that you've done, but it's giving action to it. And then the next thing you're going to describe is what is it that you did, your accomplishment or accountability. So if you say that you implemented, then the next thing should be, well, what was it that you implemented? Did you implement a budget review? Did you implement a research project? So action, and then next is the accomplishment or accountability. And then the third part about writing a description is the result. So if you say that you initiated a research project, what was the result of it? And so here's an example of what that looks like. So you'll notice in this example, the applicant is talking about a web application that's utilizing JavaScript. That's what they were wanting to do. So they developed a web application, but then the result was it allows customers to browse and purchase products on an encrypted platform. So now in a very short amount of time, I can see exactly what someone has done. That action verb, that accomplishment that they did, and what was the result of that. Here is another example. Maybe you're in business, maybe you're in sales or something like that, and you want to talk about something that you did there. So again, we start with that action verb, implemented. So implemented means initiated or started. What did they start? Well, they started a LinkedIn and paid advertising campaign targeted toward new customers. And the result of that was they saw 14% growth in our target demographic. And I put that number in there, 14%, because when you can, always try to use a number to quantify what you've done. Okay. So again, when you're writing your bullet point descriptions, you're going along these 3 areas. And then this is one example of what that bullet point could look like. And then another example of what that description of what you've done. And so just think about all the different things that you've done, and then you can use this formula to write those descriptions for that experience section. The next section is leadership and service. And so these are areas where outside of, say, the classroom experience, you talk about all of your involvements. And again, before you write your resume, you can just think to yourself, well, what is it that I do outside of the class that I'd like to talk about? Are you a member of a club? So Aman told me that there's a cricket tournament going on. So I don't know, maybe you're involved in a cricket club, or maybe you're in a student organization like a chess club. Maybe you volunteer your time. Maybe you are a mentor to someone. So those are all different things that you might want to talk about. Do you do any leadership role kind of things in there? So a lot of different things that you might want to mention in your leadership and service section. And this is, to me, I think an important section because it shows not only your involvement outside of the classroom, but it gives the application committee an idea of where else you might have interest that maybe they might be able to connect with you. And if you want, you're more than welcome to put one or two bullet points of description in there as well to talk a little bit more about what you've done. And you'll notice with that formatting, it's very similar to that experience section. So, okay, leadership and service. And then the last section here is where you can talk about any technical skills that you have or awards. And what I mean by technical skills is maybe you have computer skills. So, for example, maybe you do coding in Python or HTML. Or maybe you do study statistics, and so maybe you've used R or Stata. So this is where you can talk about some of your computer skills. Also, you can talk about your language skills as well. So outside of the language that you speak every day, maybe you've been taking another language. Maybe you've been taking German. Maybe you've been taking French or Mandarin, Japanese. You can talk about all those different language skills that you have. And of course, maybe you've had an award or an honor. Maybe because of part of being part of a club, they honored you with an award for service or something like that. Definitely something that you can put into that skills section. So, okay. So those are the components of a resume, which is one of the first documents that a selection committee will always be looking at. And again, this is a way to introduce who you are very quickly to the application selection committee. Okay. So this next document that I want to talk about with regard to creating a strong graduate school application is a statement of intent, or sometimes you hear about it as a statement of purpose. I did share in the chat an example of what a statement of intent looks like, and it is AI generated because I just wanted to use some components to it. So it's really just meant for illustrative purposes, but it's to give you an idea of what it could look like. And so what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is what is the purpose of a statement of intent and how do you build one? Okay. So in the application process, as selection committees are getting to know you through the resume or the CV, the next thing that they're going to look at is your statement of intent. This is the why is it that you are wanting to join our program? Why is it that you want to join our PhD in engineering or philosophy? Or why is it that you want to pursue a master's of business program? So now this is where they can get to know you a little bit more. And so the statement of intent really talks about your academic journey and where your research interests are. Maybe you have an interest in studying sustainable farming practices. Maybe you have an interest in studying politics within, I don't know, Europe or Asia or something like that. But this is where you can start talking about what it is that interests you about the program that you're applying for. These documents tend to be 1 to 3 pages in length, so they're kind of long. And this is where you want to take some time to start figuring out exactly what you want to put into your statement of intent. The other thing, too, that application committees look at with the statement of intent is they want to see if you are a good fit or a match for the program. So, for example, in my program that I apply for or that I recruit for, it's a Master of Global Affairs program. And it's broken down into 3 areas. We have a peace program, governance and policy, and sustainable development. And so when they read your statement of intent, and let's say you're applying for a peace program, they want to see that you maybe have some skills or experiences and background, perhaps in conflict resolution or mediation. Or maybe you work within your local government, wherever you're located. And so that's why you're applying for the governance and policy major of our program. So again, they just want to see if you are a good fit. And so as you start to write your statement of intent or statement of purpose, These are some questions that you need to think about to help you, if that once you answer, you can start writing your statement of intent. So the first part is why do you want the degree that you're applying for, and what are your future goals? So let's say you're applying for a Master of Business Administration program. So you would say, something like, um, I've always been interested in MBA programs because my family owns a business, and I was brought up within that environment, and I got my hand with doing inventory and marketing for it and trying to grow the business beyond just the one location to other locations. That's just an example. Um, but on the other side of that is if you apply for this MBA program and get into it, what is it that you want to do with it? Do you talk about how you want to come and study in the United States and then take your degree back to your home country? Or, maybe you're pursuing a governance and policy degree, and it's because you've had an aspiration of maybe working in your local government, or maybe working in the UN, or maybe you want to take that expertise from your business background and governance and policy because maybe you want to work at a World Bank, like the Asian Development Bank. So the second part is why this specific program? And this is where you're going to have to do some homework and put in some time. So, for example, when you're applying, as you're looking at programs that you're interested in, the degree and what your future goals might be, is who are the faculty for that program? And this is and we'll talk about this tip a little bit later, but I think sometimes this is what applicants can miss when they're trying to make a competitive application. It's not just you're applying for the program, but you need to understand exactly who might be teaching you. So in this case, it would be faculty members. So for example, on our webpage, we have a directory of all of our faculty. And so, as you're thinking, is this program a good fit for me? That's where you need to see which of these faculty have research interests or maybe background of skills and experiences that match with mine. And so, in your statement of intent, this is a really good place to start talking about, oh, I'm interested in governance policy, especially local government. And I see that there is this particular professor, and you can name the professor and mention them in your statement of intent. So this is just a good way to start building the relationship with the faculty member, but also a good way for you to understand, is this program a good fit for who I am? Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Ah, okay. So again, this is where you need to do your research and get to know who the faculty are, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Another thing that you want to mention in your statement of intent is what are your strengths? So, you can talk about your strengths in terms of the credentials you have. So maybe the degree that you have. Maybe you are part of a professional association, and so you have a licensure that you want to talk about. Um, what are your skills and experiences that you highlight? Maybe you've done a lot of experience with quantitative data analysis. That's one of the things my program is looking for. And so you might you might want to talk about how you use R or Stata within the particular job that you're in. And then, of course, the last thing is you can talk about any unusual circumstances. And what I mean by that is maybe, it's been many years from when you graduated college to when you apply for a program. And you might talk about, the reason that there's a gap there between when you went to college and when you're applying for a graduate program is because you've been working professionally for some reason. That was the case with me. For example, I'm finishing up my doctorate degree right now, but it was, I think, almost 15 years between when I started my master's program and when I started my doctorate program. So I just explained, that I was away from academia because I was working professionally. So, and a few final tips for writing your statement of intent. Um, make sure that when you've have a draft for it, that you give it to someone to review. Not just review for grammar, but also review for content and good flow. So for example, if you're already in school right now, this would be a great opportunity to ask one of your faculty member, I'm considering, and just ask, I'm considering applying for a program in the US. I was wondering if you could review my statement of intent and give me any comments. Um, Maybe your school has a writing center and might be willing to take a look at it for feedback. Or maybe the staff of Education USA or the Fulbright office, they might do a drop-in clinic where you can bring in your application materials for review. For the statement of intent, make sure that you put your name and the name of the program that you're applying for on each of the pages. And the last thing is until you are completely satisfied with how your statement of intent and your application materials look, don't submit anything. And this is actually a really good time of year to start thinking about the application because a lot of applications will begin in the fall, and here we are in the spring. And so that gives you many months there. Okay, so that's statements of intent. The next thing we're going to talk about is letters of recommendation. So these are people who know you really well that can talk about your skills and experiences. They can talk about your abilities as a student, perhaps doing research, or maybe you're already working professionally, and so they can talk about your skills as a professional within a particular industry. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can secure some really good letters of recommendation. Because again, to make your application competitive for graduate school, faculty members are going to look at who is it that is recommending you to apply for this particular program. So again, this is where you need to start early and choose wisely. So one of the things that I always recommend for people when they're thinking of who should I reach out to write my letters of recommendation is, and again, this is what I do. I take a blank sheet of paper and on there, I start thinking to myself, who knows me really well? And just start there and just write down everyone that you know who knows you very well. It could be a professor that you've taken multiple classes from. It could be a work supervisor who you've worked very closely with and knows your skills and abilities. And so before even the application process starts, once you've come up with your list of people, um, start contacting them and saying, I am interested in applying for a program with a university in the United States. Would you be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me? Okay. So start early in that process. And then the next thing is choose your people strategically. So for example, going back to my program, let's say you are applying for a governance and policy major, and you're trying to think of who would be a good recommender. Well, if a skill that you want to highlight is maybe your work within government, maybe your local government, then perhaps one of your recommenders should be a person who knows your skills and abilities in working within government. So this is where it's a match between your skills and experience and the person who knows you the best. And again, you want to confirm with them that they can write a strong letter of recommendation for you. And of course, by asking early to your recommenders if they'd be willing to write a letter for you, you can confirm their willingness. Because what you don't want to have happen is that the application is due in 1 week, but you haven't started early, you don't know who would recommend you, and then you're not quite sure if they will write a letter for you. So this is where it's wise to start early in the process. Something that you can help your recommenders with is sharing vital information about the program that you're applying to. So maybe you're applying for a chemical engineering program at a particular school in the United States. If you can, you should share the link with that program and maybe some of the key faculty in there So that way they kind of know a little bit more about what it is that you're applying for. And I would also recommend that you share the other documents that make up your application. So you might want to share your CV or resume. You might also want to share your statement of intent for them. And of course, if there's any instructions, like, okay, when you submit your letter of recommendation, you're going to go to this website and you're going to upload the document. So all of those kind of things will set you up for success. And if you want, you can even share with the recommender, here are some key things that I hope that you can share about my skills and experiences. Remember that research project that I did for you where you asked me to coordinate all of the different volunteers for it? That's a leadership skill that I want you to highlight for me. So again, this is helping your recommender set them up for success so they can write a strong recommendation for you. So, okay. And of course, as you are applying to these different programs, you may need to follow up with the recommenders to make sure that they've submitted their letters of recommendation. In our application process, when you fill out the online application and include the email address of the recommender, a link is automatically sent to them so that they can upload their document. And then when they send the document back to us electronically, you get a reminder that the document or that the letter of recommendation has been submitted. But there might be some people that maybe they didn't get the link, or maybe the deadline is coming up, and so you might have to just kindly follow up with them to ask them if they've already submitted their their letter of recommendation. So, and of course, the last thing there where I say is show gratitude. Thank them for not only their willingness to write you a letter of recommendation, but that they did write you a letter of recommendation. Um, for myself, when I applied to my doctorate program, because it had been many years, um, I had one of my professors for my master's program, and I had two supervisors. And so once I saw that they submitted their letters of recommendation for me, I just wrote them a short email and just said, thank you very much. I was able to apply for the program. And then, of course, later on, once I got into my doctorate program, I wrote them a follow-up email and said, I just want you to know that I did get into the doctorate program. And again, I want to thank you for writing that letter of recommendation for me. Mhm. Okay. So when you think about a application for a graduate program, and we've talked about these kind of components, and the fourth one here I didn't talk about, which is testing scores, but we'll get into that later. When you think about the three things that I've talked about, don't think of them as just separate documents that you submit for your application, but think about how they are all integrated together, okay? And they form a holistic picture of who you are. And here's the example. Um, let's say you are applying for an engineering program, chemical engineering program. And so in your CV or your resume, you highlight your skills and experiences because you have a background perhaps in chemistry or science. So that's where the application committee gets to know you in a very quick manner. And then in your statement of intent, this is where you talk about the program that you're applying to and why you're applying to that chemical engineering program. Because they have a particular faculty that you want to learn from. They have good labs and internship prospects for you. And they also have a good job pipeline for you to enter into. That's what is attracting you to that. And then, of course, with your letters of recommendation, that's where you include people who know your skills and experiences with a chemical background or a science background. So you can see how all of those things fit together to make you a competitive applicant in the program that you are applying for. So again, these three, resume and CV, letters of recommendation and statement of intent, As you think about any graduate program that you're applying for, those kind of are the core documents that you will always be asked to submit. And if you take your time and start now, start early, and do your research by reaching out to faculty, learning more about programs, this will help make you a highly competitive applicant in the graduate school market. Okay. So now that I've talked about those three vital components of a competitive application, I just want to give you a few more tips as you consider applying for graduate schools in the US. So research and selection. There are many places where you can find a graduate program for you to enter in. But to me, it's not necessarily about the prestige of the school, but it's about finding the right fit. When you consider that for a master's program, which usually takes 2 years, or a PhD program, which could be anywhere from 4 years to 7 years, you're going to be giving up, again, one of your most precious resources, and that's your time. And so you want to make sure that you're finding the right program for you. And what that means is, again, you're not just looking for the school, but you're going to look for who is it that are going to be your faculty. And so this is where you need to start your research early and start looking at directories of the programs that you're applying for and ask who are their faculty members, because in many cases, these faculty members will be your advisor. And so when you think about it, it's almost like going into a relationship. When you need help with finding classes that you might want to select, you're going to be going to your faculty member. If you're thinking about writing your doctoral dissertation, the faculty advisor is going to be the one that helps shape where you might be doing your research and how you're going to be building your particular dissertation. When it comes time for you to publish a paper, these are the people that are going to be reviewing your paper before you publish it. And so again, while the school is an important place, you should also be thinking about the faculty member that might be your advisor or who you might be taking classes with. And so one of the things, and I'll talk about this a little later too, I would recommend is reaching out to potential faculty members at the university that you might be applying to. Asking them, maybe a few questions about their program, or maybe asking something specific about the type of research that you do. So that's one thing I highly recommend, which is prioritizing the faculty and not just necessarily the school that you're applying to. Another thing to consider, and this is always very important when I'm helping to review applications, is funding. How am I going to pay, for my education? And so the advice I'm going to give is kind of generalized, but you can apply it, to multiple graduate schools. Typically, for master's programs that you might be applying to, many of them may be self-funded. And what I mean by that is that you provide the majority of funding for that. And so typically, funding is separated into two categories. One is tuition. So that's the money that you use to pay for your credit hours or your coursework, including the fees that you might pay to a school. The other is a stipend. And a stipend is what covers cost of living expenses. So things like paying for rent, paying for groceries, paying for a place to stay, things like that. So for the most part, master's programs are self-funded where you provide the funding for that. On the opposite end, PhD programs, doctor programs, tend to be fully funded. And so that's where they will give you a full tuition scholarship, as well as a full stipend to cover living expenses. Some of these programs might have a component where you can be a research or teaching assistantship, and it's either built into the obligation of the program or it's something that you can apply for later. And so, again, this is where you need to start researching early to find out about the funding mechanism for the program that you are applying for, because they are very, very different. And so, if funding is something that is important for you to know, then that might be one of the questions that you might want to ask right out. Another thing to consider as you start applying for graduate programs is where is the university or college located? Um, is it in a big city, maybe like New York or Chicago or Houston or Miami? Or is it located in a more countryside or rural area? Because those can have an effect not only on cost of living, the amount of money that you need to, buy groceries with and pay rent for, but it may have a bearing on access to maybe some of the industries that you might be interested in. So, for example, um, if you're interested in aerospace and space exploration, Colorado has a very good aeronautical industry there. Um, if you're interested in finance, uh, a city called Charlotte, North Carolina has a very big banking industry that is going on. Or maybe you're interested in pharmaceuticals, and so Boston and Massachusetts and areas on the East Coast of America just have a lot of industry around those hubs. So again, as you're thinking about where you might attend, also consider the location and where that might benefit, your opportunity to do research with, or maybe if you're thinking of OPT and staying in the U.S. afterwards, where you might work later. I mentioned this before, but to me, another critical component of becoming a competitive applicant is contacting faculty members. Um, and this is where you start to build a relationship with a potential advisor or a potential a potential teacher for you. Remember back when I was talking about statement of intent, and I mentioned, you might want to include any research that a faculty member at the school that you're applying to, they match with yours. Well, this is why you might want to contact a faculty member by starting early. And so, you have access, like with our program, a directory of all of our faculty, and you are able to reach out to them and maybe ask them a question. And I'm not saying that you should just ask any question, but what I'm recommending is that you should be very specific with the kind of question that you are asking. So, for example, many places have a recruiter that helps with admissions. And so, obviously, I can answer any questions about the admissions process, what documents to submit, and things like that. What I'm suggesting is that when you talk with a faculty member, that when you reach out to them, you ask a very specific question to them, a question that can be answered by, say, someone like me, or information that you can get off of a website. So, for example, maybe when you're reading a faculty member's biography, um, you see a research paper that they wrote. This is where you can engage them and maybe talking about how that research that the faculty member aligns with the type of research that you are very interested in doing. And so again, you're starting to create a connection, but it's where you need to start doing this early in the process. Don't wait until the application is already started to start reaching out to faculty members. And you'll find that faculty members can be very eager and want to engage with you in that because you're showing an interest in their research. And when you reach out to them, it doesn't have to be a very long email because you want to keep in mind that when they're reading this, they can be very busy. If your question is buried under a 2 or 3 page email, they may dismiss it. And so just be very brief. You could just say something like this. Hi, my name is Christian, and I'm applying to the Master of Global Affairs program. I saw that you did research in sustainable food economy um, in Ghana. I do similar research in my work here at my university. I was wondering, could you tell me more about how, and then ask your question. It doesn't have to be very long, but it gets to the point, and it shows that faculty member that you have an interest. Okay, so reaching out to faculty. Another thing is timing. When is it that you should start the application process or the research process when you want to apply for a master's or PhD program? So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, we just completed our application and offer letter process. And so now we're going to start an application cycle, which the application will begin in September of this year. And so actually right now, March, April, and May, this is a good time to start researching graduate programs that you might be interested in. Because a lot of the application processes that you are going to be starting, the application will open in either September or October or November. And again, this is for school that will be starting in fall or later on in 2027. So now is actually a really good time to start researching places. I mentioned an email that you can use to introduce yourself. Again, you can write one that you can use multiple times, but I would recommend that you keep your email brief and just ask a very simple question about the program. And of course, and as far as any outcomes are concerned, sometimes you might reach out to a faculty member and you might not get a response. That's not because they don't want to consider you, but you might have to consider that maybe they're very busy doing research or maybe they're teaching, and so they might not be able to respond back for you. So just these are just a few tips with contacting faculty members. Excuse me. Um, as international students, here are just some things else to consider with the application process. So and again, like with my program, if you're listing that you are a foreign language speaker, then obviously we're going to be looking for any English testing that you might have, TOEFL, IELTS. Our school takes Duolingo, and I've seen an uptick in the use of Duolingo because I think it tends to be a little bit less expensive, and it might be easier to access. Another thing to consider is some schools may offer assistance with paying for the fee for taking tests. And so that might be something that you might want to ask the recruiting officer at the university. As far as visas are concerned, now that we've given out our offer letters, um, it's only at that time when you are given an offer to a school that you can start the visa process to obtain your I-20. So again, these are steps, that take along the way. Another thing too, when you apply for programs and especially for the visa process, you might have to show financial proof. And that means your ability to pay for living expenses while you're in the US. And so that's where if your program gives a stipend, usually that stipend amount is given in the offer letter. And so you can use that amount as part of your visa application process. So just a few things to mention if you're an international student as you apply for these programs. I mentioned this before, a typical timeline for fall admission. And again, we're going to be starting our application cycle for fall of 2027. So between now and August is when you can start researching the programs that you're interested in. This is where you can start taking your tests. If you're applying for master's and PhD programs, some programs might require that you take the GRE, which is the general review exam. Um, and so you can either take them at a center, like a physical location. You can also take the GRE online in some places. If you're applying for a law school, there might be the LSAT. So make sure that you understand what standardized tests are required for the program that you are applying for. September and October, Obviously, you want to finalize your list of schools that you're applying to, drafting your statement of intent. November is when you want to get your letters of recommendation in. So for our program, our application window is September through December. And so having your letters of recommendation, come in between that time is really good. And then the deadline for programs can vary. You'll find that many of them say that start in the fall of the following year, have a deadline between December and January. So, for example, our doctorate program, our PhD in Sustainable Development, that deadline is December 1st. Our Master of Global Affairs, it's December 15th. But programs vary, so make sure that you are well aware of the deadline. And then once your application is received, that's when the selection committees start going through all of the applicants for their consideration and doing their holistic review. And so it's usually then not until March or April when decisions are sent out. So that is a typical timeline for a fall admission cycle once you start applying for master's and PhD programs. Okay. So that was a lot of information. And, you know, this is I'm very excited for you because you have so many wonderful opportunities of programs that you can apply for. And not only do you have, say, someone like myself who can give you some advice and give you some tips and give you a particular opportunity, but you also have a staff within Education USA that is also bringing in more people like myself, but they themselves are also available to help guide you through the process. However, you are also more than welcome to reach out to me as well if you have any questions. Okay. So just this final part before we go into question and answer. Um, so as I mentioned, I recruit for a master's and PhD program at the Keough School of Global Affairs at the University of Notre Dame, and we're located in Indiana. We are a private Catholic institution. We have about 12,000 people that attend our school, and about 3,500 of those people are graduate students. Um, our Keough School of Global Affairs has 9 centers and institutes. We have world-renowned faculty. We do a lot of global partnerships, and we have 12 global offices all around the world in different cities. And so we have 2 particular programs. One is a Master of Global Affairs, which is a 2-year professional master's degree. And then we also have a PhD in Sustainable Development that takes 4 to 7 years. So master's is 2 years, our PhD is 4 to 7 years. And our Master of Global Affairs is divided into 3 majors that you can choose from: governance and policy, international peace, and a sustainable development program. Our sustainable development program in our master's is STEM designated, as well as our PhD in sustainable development is also STEM designated. And the way our curriculum works is that you take 5 foundational courses all together as a cohort. And then depending on the major that you've applied for, there are courses specific to that major. So governance and policy specific courses, sustainable development. But you also have the opportunity to take elective courses. So if you want to take business courses from our Mendoza College of Business, or maybe there's an engineering course, you can. And then we also have a practicum and internship that's available. And all of this is 46 credit hours in order to apply from our program. One of the interesting things about our program is that we are very diverse. And so each year we bring in a cohort of up to 45 students. And of those 45 students, only about 10 to 12 are actually from the US. And so we have students literally coming from all over the world, all different country backgrounds, as well as educational and work backgrounds that come to our program. Depending on the major that you pick, you have 2 experiential learning components. One of them is called iLab or Integration Lab, and the other, if you study the Peace program, that's a Peace Studies internship. The Peace Studies internship is actually 6 months, where you get to work with an organization of your choosing. With the integration lab, this is where you're partnered with three other people to form a group of four, and then you research a project that one of our partner organizations has brought to us. For our funding opportunities, our PhD in sustainable development is fully funded, so you receive a full tuition scholarship and a full stipend. In our Master of Global Affairs program, our Peace Studies major, that is fully funded, so you receive a full tuition scholarship and a full stipend. And then the 6 month internship for that is also fully funded. For our sustainable development and governance and policy majors, we do offer up to full funding as well as full stipend, and then there's some variations thereof, partial funding, for that. But if you have any questions about specific funding for those programs, you're always welcome to reach out to me. Starting from day one in our program, we are interested in your professional development and career support. And so we start something called Career Colloquium, where we start, making sure that your resume is looking really good. We start helping you connect with our alumni networks. We bring in guest speakers who are former alumni or people within the business community that talk about professional things. And then we also do career treks. And so we travel to places like Washington, D.C., or Chicago, or Indianapolis, so we can start exposing you to industries and potential careers later on. So we want to give you support for your career outcomes. And this is just showing information for our Master of Global Affairs programs, but just some of the places that our graduates go on and work at. Because of our background, within private sector and non-governmental organizations, many of our students go then and work in the private sector and non-governmental organizations, Amnesty International, Asian Development Bank. We've had some go work at NASA and Google, with Oxfam, various agencies within the UN. Also tend to find that many of our graduates take their education and like to go back to their home countries as well, which is to me always very gratifying. If you're interested in our admissions process, so as I mentioned, we have an application cycle coming up. Our application will open in September of this year with a deadline of December 15. If you're interested in our PhD in Sustainable Development program, that deadline is December 1. Of course, things that you need for the application, resume or CV, statement of intent, letters of recommendation, transcripts for any of the school. Our program for our master's, the GRE is optional. You don't need to do it. For our PhD in Sustainable Development, it is required. And then there's an application fee of $75. However, there is a way to get an application fee waiver if you're interested. Okay. So if you're interested in applying for our program within the Keough School of Global Affairs, and again, this is just a very quick overview of that. That's my QR code, which you can connect with me. And of course, you can always send me an email. So, okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because, we've used up a lot of time. I'm going to give some time for the presentation, for any questions that you have. I'm looking in the some of the questions here. Someone was asking about the sharing the resume template. Okay, so I shared it in there. Okay. Actually, I'm going to share all three of these. Okay, I shared the resume template, the CV template, and then I'm also going to share the statement of intent template as well. Okay. Going through some of the questions here. Okay, is the lecture being recorded? Yes, I believe so. I shared, the other question was share the presentation slides. I did share them with my Education USA hosts. So you can reach out to them to get the presentation slides. Um, is 1 year nonprofit experience for the MGA good or need more experience? Um, yes, that is good experience. Really, any experience is what we're looking for. And this is where some programs can be slightly different. Um, our program preferences experience after graduation from college. So the more experience you have, the better. In fact, because ours is a professional master's degree, the median age of our applicant is older. It tends to be 28, 29, or 30 because they have experience. But we don't differentiate where you get that experience. If it's from an NGO, that's great. If it's from the professional sector, that is also great. So yes, all experience is good experience. Let's see. So the question was, would you recommend cold calling faculty for master's programs? Okay, so I definitely recommend doing that for PhD programs. With master's programs, it might be a little different. And so that's where I would recommend before you cold call or cold email a master's faculty member, make sure that you've read their biography and make sure that you've read any of their papers that they have published. Because when you do reach out to them, you want to keep your email short to them, but you also want to ask a very specific question. So it might be related to the research that you did and where it intersects with yours. Don't make your email really long, as in several pages, but maybe make it just 1 or 2 short paragraphs to at least introduce yourself and then ask your question quickly. And it shouldn't be a question that someone like a recruiter can answer for you or information that you find on the website. But no, that is a good question. Is there an age limit for PhD? As far as I know, there isn't an age limit. It's more of a matter of if you are a good fit for that program. Um, in the programs that I oversee, the master's and PhD, we have age ranges starting at 22, but we have applicants that are 50 and 60 years old. I myself, I'll be turning 52 this summer, and I'm completing my doctorate in education. So no, there is not an age limit for PhD. So yeah, good question. Let's see. Ah, let's see. Share the letter of intent and CV template. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I already did. Okay, so I'm going to share the statement of intent and then the CV template. Okay, I just shared those as well. A quick note about the CV template. I just realized that I didn't talk too much about it. Resumes and CVs are slightly different. A resume tends to be no more than 2 pages in length. It's just front and back. A CV, which is a curriculum vitae, can be any page length that you want it to be. Typically, what I've seen for applicants is they can be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages in length. However, they can be quite a bit more for people that have already been in the workforce. There's been a few CVs that I've evaluated that have been 10, 20, 30. The most was 50 pages, and that was because someone had many years of experience. So, yep. So anyway, yeah, shared those. The CV is really more of a listing of things, and that's another key difference between that and the resume. So yeah, good question. Okay. Um, any other questions that you have for me at this time? I know that we went over a little bit, just a lot of great information. I'm going to in the chat share my admissions email address. So that way, if anyone wants to follow up with me with any questions, you are more than welcome to. So, okay. All right. Okay. Um, let's see. Okay. Let's see some other questions here. Okay. Teaching experience at undergrad college, helpful or not? Yes, it is helpful. Again, we're looking at experience. And so for you then, the question to then ask is, how does your teaching experience, perhaps because of the subject or the area that you're teaching in, how does that fit in with the program that you're applying for? So, are you a teacher of business courses or engineering courses or science courses? But yeah, look at the program that you're applying for, see where you teach, and see how that matches in there. Yes. So yeah, absolutely. Teaching experience at undergrad level is very vital. Especially if you're looking for applying for doctorate programs, because the natural career projection from a doctoral program is not just to work into industry, but is to maybe become a professor as well. So if you can show that you have a teaching experience already, that can really help to bolster your application. Mhm. Publications impact. I'm assuming if you've have written publications or you have published, absolutely, you should include those in your application materials. And so where you would include that is you would put those either listed in your CV, in your curriculum vitae. There's a section there where it asks about any publications that you have. Or you can also list them in your resume as well. If you have a LinkedIn profile, I would also consider putting any publications that you have, a link to them in your LinkedIn profile as well. Yep. Let's see. Um, okay, a question about GRE. Um, is it a major factor in certain fields? So, when I was giving my presentation, when we look at applications, we look at applications holistically, which means that GRE score is one component of the overall application. And so what some people do is, and I did this as well, is I actually took the GRE twice because I wanted to get a higher score. But the other thing to consider is for the program, what score is it that they are looking for in particular? So, for example, in my PhD in Sustainable Development program, we are a very quantitative focused program. So, we are going to be looking at that quantitative score within the GRE. So when you're considering your architecture program or interior design, you might want to reach out to their recruiter and ask them, of the GRE scores, is there a particular one that they're looking for, either the qualitative or quantitative? And then if so, if they can give you an idea of what the competitive score for that is. For the quantitative section, um, for my program, a competitive score is 150 to 160. But again, that might vary on the program that you are looking at. Let's see, factors consider while shortlisting graduate programs specifically, like ranking. Um, so I think it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Education USA doesn't really promote ranking. But if that's something that's important for you, you can put that in. But what I think is more important than ranking and prestige is to look at the quality of the faculty who's going to be teaching you, and also the quality of the program. And so that's where I would ask for an example of their curriculum. What are the classes that they're going to be teaching, and if they can give you kind of a brief description of those courses. The other thing that I would factor into is the support structure at the university. So when you come to the university, do they offer things like a writing center to help you with maybe you want to write a publication? Is there an office of grants and fellowships if you want to apply for additional research money? So that's something that Notre Dame has. How many years is the support available? So if they give you a tuition scholarship, and let's say the doctorate program is 7 years, do they only fund you for 5 of that, which means that you have to come up with the other 7 or the other 2? Another thing to consider factors is what sort of career support do they give? Is it, they do, do they have an Office of Career Services? Where do their students, after they graduate, where do they go to? Do they go into industry or do they teach? So I think those are some other factors. And of course, I mentioned where is the university located? So is it important that you be in a big city so that you have access to other industries or networking connections? Since I'm probably speaking to people from Pakistan, is it important that maybe there's a Pakistani community that is near that school that you can become involved in as well for support? So those are just a few ideas, but a good question. Let's see. Um, Are school involvement suggested for master's applicants since they were a long time ago? So yeah, that's a good question. So what I would do is, as you're making your list of things that you're involved in, look at the ones that you've done most recently, and you might want to consider leaving off anything that happened a while ago. So for example, like for me, if I were applying now, I'm 50 years old. I probably wouldn't talk about how I was a coach for the tennis team when I was in college. Um, but what I might bring up is when I was in college, I did a 3-month service term in Indonesia. And that's where, I studied shrimp hatcheries and sustainable food practices because that was relevant to some of what I was applying for. So again, it's making a list and seeing if those experiences in the past have any relevance in there. But that's where you can put all of that though in your LinkedIn profile because it doesn't matter how long ago it was. But for your resume, because you need to keep it short, you might want to keep some of those things off. Good question. Okay. Um, let's see. Someone asked me about where did I send the template. They couldn't see it. I did put it in the webinar chat. However, I did also share them with the Education USA hosts for this. So if they don't have it, you can also email me. I did put it in the webinar chat, which I think people had access to as well. If not, you can send me an email. And so in the webinar chat, I did put my email address in there as well. How many years of study gap is acceptable for master's studies? Um, so, it varies. In my program, because the median age to apply that people have been applying is like 29. We've had some people that graduated when they were 22, and so now that's been a 7 to 8 year gap. However, we have some people because they graduated college, they went to work in industry. It's been maybe 20 or 30 years. So it's not that there isn't anything unacceptable. It's more a matter of how can you talk about your skills and experiences and what makes you a good fit that you are applying for the program. So it doesn't matter how many years of study gap. It's more a matter of can you talk about how what you're doing is a good fit for the program that you are applying for. How important is undergraduate GPA as part of the application selection criteria? So again, the GPA for my program, it's only one thing that we consider. So for example, the minimum GPA that we're looking is a 3.0 GPA out of a 4.0 scale. However, if we can see that you had strong skills and experiences, good letters of recommendation, and that otherwise you're a really good fit for the program, we will consider people with a lower GPA as long as that applicant can show other skills and experiences that are highly competitive. Would you recommend cold email for graduates? Yes, in some circumstances I can, but before you cold email, make sure that you've done your research, not just about the program that you're applying to, but also the faculty member that you're reaching out to. Read their read their biography, and also read about any publications that they have, so that way you can answer. That way you could ask your specific question. Let's see. Um, let's see. Okay, educator in the public sector, linguistics. Okay, so should I apply for a PhD or master's program? Really good question. So, and again, this is typically master's degree programs tend to be terminal degrees, and they tend to be professional master's degrees, meaning they're meant more for people that want to pursue a career within industry and go back within that industry. So, for example, in our case, we have people that have already been working at, say, the Asian Development Bank or Oxfam, or maybe within their local government. They want to come and get a master's degree, and then they want to go back and work at the place that they're already looking at. Typically, for people who enter into PhD programs, it's because they want to become professors. They want to become a professor at a college or a university and continue with their research. Some may go and work for think tanks, or some might do more higher level research. So, to answer your question, it really depends on what it is that you want to do with your degree afterwards. If you are already in the public sector, but maybe you're looking to work at a think tank, then perhaps pursuing a PhD could be a good fit for that. Maybe if you're already a teacher right now, but you want to become a professor later on, then a PhD program, could fit. But if you're looking to perhaps go back into industry and just want to attain new skill sets, then that's where a master's degree program might be a good fit too. But this is a really good question to, if you want to follow up with me, we can have a Zoom call, or as you engage with other programs, asking that recruiting person, what are the students and what are their outcomes depending on master's or PhD program? Yeah, good question. Um, hmm, okay. It seems that people, okay. Yeah, okay. I'm getting the thing about wrapping it up since we're 20 minutes 20 minutes gone. I'm going to share really quickly again um, my screen because it has my email address. And so for some of you that did not receive the templates or information, um, please send me an email. I have a resume template, a CV template, and a statement of intent example. Feel free to send me an email, and I will send those documents to you later today. Okay. All right. Thank you again for your time. We've gone over. And so, oh yeah, I noticed that we were going to share the recording. So, okay. With that, I'll turn it back over to our Education USA host. Thank you very much for your time. All right.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you so much, Christian. Thank you, everybody, for attending the session. The recording will be up on our Facebook page in a couple of days. You can go there and review whatever footage that you might deem fit. Thank you again for hosting today's event, Christian. Really appreciate you giving us the time and the extended Q&A session. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.